Good Monday morning to everyone. Thank you for joining us for our Monday Mornings at Maine online edition. My name is Heather Miller and I am an adult programming librarian here at the La Crosse Public Library. And this morning we're joined by my colleague, Lindsay Schmidt, who is a reference librarian. And she has been a wonderful asset to the library for the last 8 years teaching our technology classes. So I'm going to turn it over to Lindsay so she can teach us about how to stay protected online. Thanks, Lindsay.
Hi, Heather. Thank you for the welcome, and hi, everyone. Good morning. So I'm going to just jump right in and start sharing my slides here. And can everyone see them? Great, thumbs up. All right. So today we're going to cover staying as safe as you can regarding your privacy and security online. Always important, and now it feels more important than ever. Before diving in further, I do want to tip my imaginary hat to academic librarian Dorothea Salo. She has a talk of the same name, which inspired this one. I have a link to it at the end. It's a great talk and goes in kind of a different direction than ours. So lots of new information. So our plan today is to go over passwords, emails, websites, a little bit of social media, Wi-Fi, which we get questions about at our reference desk, and then also just extra ways to keep your technology protected, either your computer, your phone, your tablet, whatever's connecting to the internet. With that said, my goal is not to overwhelm you with tech lingo, and hopefully by the end of this, when we do our little review, at least some of it will feel useful and worthwhile to do. And maybe you're doing it all already, so we'll find out. So let's get started with passwords. So obviously, we want to make our passwords pretty solid, pretty strong. I'm going to look over here for my statistic. So it turns out that about 20% of all passwords in use are 0000, 1111, 1212, and 1234. So don't use those. Hackers already know those passwords. And that makes it just too easy to get into your private information. You also don't want to use super private things for your passwords, say a 9-digit number that happens to also be your social security number, because if that does get exposed during a data breach, which we sometimes hear about in the news, it would be all too easy for a hacker to go, 9 numbers, that might be a social, and then that leads to much more trouble. So you've probably heard the current advice is to have a mix of uppercase and lowercase and special characters in passwords. The latest coming out, though, I think it was from Consumer Reports, says that even more important than those special characters is just to have a long password, because the more characters you have, the just mathematically, the harder it is to crack for a hacker. So the latest advice is to think of a whole sentence that means something to you, but isn't too personally identifiable. So again, like no birthdays, not your full name, that kind of stuff. So we just have a couple of silly examples here. I do also want to mention, as we're moving on to our next slide here, about using different ones. I'm totally guilty of not always doing this because it's hard, right? It's hard to keep track of all of our passwords. And there was actually a 2016 study about this, about security fatigue, how we're all just so tired of the pop-ups reminding us to change our passwords or asking for passwords. And we're all at a point where we just want to put one thing in and be done. But that's not super safe, because if one gets compromised, if one is in a data breach and hackers get a hold of it, that's one thing. But if you're using that password across multiple sites, especially if it's financial or really personal medical information, then that hacker can get access into those sites as well. They're going to try using that password in multiple places. So this screenshot here is mine. This is from Google, from me being logged into Gmail. I'm not proud, but this is something that you might find if you're logged into browsers. It might tell you that you have compromised passwords or reused passwords or weak passwords. So I know what these weak passwords are. They're very old. They're 6 characters. I need to work on that. When you see something like this red warning sign, a compromised password, I know what that one is too. It was found in a data leak, but I've left that up just as an example, because that password's not used anywhere else, so I'm not too worried about it hanging out there. And so you're hearing me say, oh, a lot, was found in a data breach, How do you find out if your information was compromised like that? So there's a website out there, this is trustworthy. It's called Have I Been Pwned? So it's a P instead of an O. haveibeenpwned.com/passwords. It's run by the security analyst who created a password manager called 1Password, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But you can put in your password into this site and it'll tell you either, oh no, that has been leaked, or good news, that hasn't been found anywhere yet. And so what's happening is that the security analyst regularly kind of trolls the dark web and finds lists of passwords that have been leaked. So he has this always growing database that you can check your password against to see if it's been leaked. And if you find out it has, or you're just worried that it might be, that same website, that haveibeenpwned.com, has a way to notify you of your account getting compromised. So you would just put in your email address, check the box, and then click that notify me. And I should say, of course, change the password. If it's been found in a data breach, immediately change that password. So we've been talking about having a whole bunch of passwords and how it's important for our own safety to have them all be different and have them be long and maybe have special characters in them. And that's a lot. I know, like, people like their password notebooks. And if that's what works for you, I'm not going to argue against it. But if you'd like to try something a little more techie that you can access online at any time, you might want to try something called a password manager. So these are just software products, and their whole purpose is to keep your passwords safe and remember them for you. So in the end, once you've put all your passwords into it, the only password you have to remember is the one master password to get into the password manager. And they are really serious about that. I will be honest, I have locked myself out of a few of my password managers in the past because I made such a complicated password. And I thought to myself, oh, I'll remember. So be careful. That one might be worth writing down and sealing in an envelope somewhere, just in case. But these can be handy. So what ends up happening with these is you put all your passwords in and their corresponding websites that they match to. And then whenever you go to that website, your password manager will say, oh, do you want to log in with that password I've saved? And you just tap yes, and it sticks it in for you. So you don't have to remember it. The password manager just sticks it in for you. Another nice thing is that these password managers can also generate really good hard passwords for you, like those long gobbledygook passwords that you have no chance of remembering. They can make those just to give you extra security for your logins. And if this might look totally familiar to you guys, this is Consumer Reports, right? They do their ratings. The best one on the market to them is this 1Password that I mentioned a couple slides ago. The security analyst who developed it has that Have I Been Pwned website. So they got a score of 88. And then there's more. I haven't played with Keeper, but I have played with Bitwarden and LastPass. So if you ever want to pursue this, feel free to call or email the library, and we can do a one-on-one and talk about it more, see if it's something that might be up your alley. Happy to talk about it. It might end up being pretty useful. So an alternative to like a full software package, a password manager, you might notice that your browser, your Chrome, Microsoft Edge, Firefox, might be saving passwords or offering to save passwords for you. And we saw that briefly a few slides ago with my example from Google, where it was warning me about my overused and weak passwords. So that can be handy too. If you don't think you have a whole bunch of passwords, or you're really good at remembering all of them, like you could just leave it to your browser rather than trying to set up the extra piece of software. What's also nice, if you're saving passwords in your browser, is that you'll get alerts when your password's been exposed, which can be handy. A lot of the password managers offer that too, but it's a toss-up if it's part of the free package or part of the cost for the password managers. But it's free in your browser. Again, this example is the one that has my compromised password. This is hungryroot.com. This is what the warning looks like when you have a compromised password. I actually had reached out to HungryRoot because I could not figure out how to change my password, and they said, there's no way. Haha. So I'm just not using that site, and I don't use that password anywhere else. If you're a little more tech inclined, another pretty highly recommended thing to do is to set up two-factor authorization. So if you've ever had to have a code texted to your phone so you could log into Gmail or log into your email, that was two-factor authorization. So it adds in an extra step before you can log into a site, but that extra step is an extra level of security, right? If someone's trying to hack in, odds are they don't also have your phone. Like if they have your laptop that's already, it has your password saved into it, they would not also have your phone in order to receive the code to fully get into that site. There are pros and cons, honestly. Like, how often do you want to be slowed down by this? If you're just checking your email, do you want to have to check your phone as well every time to enter in a code? It's something to think about. It is quite recommended for financial websites, since those are just so crucial to our lives and can really kind of wreck things if someone gets access. So that two-factor authorization can be a really good extra layer of security. And again, if you want to hear more about this or set it up, happy to meet with you guys, ask for a one-on-one. We can go over it. So that was a whirlwind through passwords. And now we're going to talk about our emails. Oh, right? Too much junk in our emails. So we're going to kind of test our skills here with this junk email that I got recently. So let's take a look here. So obviously the first thing you want to do if you have opened up an email is kind of check who sent it, right? So this came from Apple, and when you look at the actual email address, that doesn't really look right, right? You don't usually see hyphens in an email address like that. And usually when you see something from a business, the name of the business is usually right next to the .com or the .gov, whatever it is. So that should be more like maybe support.apple.com, not this hyphenated thing. So that's one clue, is checking out the email address. Then another clue is just checking for grammar, right? Weird little things like, dear customer, if this is really Apple, I have spent a lot of money with them and they should have my name on file at this point. That should not be a generic customer. I am insulted if this was actually Apple, but it's not. And then there's this, a request was submitted to reset your Apple ID password from our client area. What is a client area? Like, what does that mean? But these factors, like these things might not catch your eye right away. You might just zoom in on this. It was a password request and it came out of the Central District of Hong Kong. And that's that international location is supposed to trigger that, oh no, that panic that someone's trying to hack in. So instead of looking at everything else carefully, that panic tells you to immediately click on whatever they're telling you to click on to go fix this. But don't, please, please, if nothing else, hesitate before clicking on links in your emails or before downloading stuff in your emails. Because it's so easy these days to disguise where that link is actually going to go. All right, this says go to security settings. Well, that is not going to go to your security settings. And there's a trick to finding out where that link wants to send you before actually just clicking and going. If on a computer, if you hover your mouse over a link, you'll notice down at the bottom of your screen, it'll end up showing you what that actual link is, like the URL. And this is gobbledygook, some kind of netlogin.com and all those letters. That is not an Apple website. That would not be Apple at all. So that's a really good heads up. If you're on a mobile device, I had to look this up. I didn't know how to do this. So on a mobile device, if you get a link and you're not sure about it, you can actually just press and hold on the link for a few seconds and a little window will pop up that shows you the full URL. And always just, like, if in doubt, throw it out, right? Just mark it spam, throw it in the trash. Or if it was actually theoretically from a friend, you can always just contact that friend and say, hey, was this real? It looked kind of spammy. Or likewise with the business or the bank, if you see something like this and you're not sure, go to the actual website for the business or the bank. I once received an email that said my Chase bank account was compromised, like there was an international charge on it. And I thought, I better call just in case. I don't know if I trust this email. And it ended up being legitimate. It was a real email from Chase warning me, but it was good to call, I think, just to confirm. Here's an extra example. You'll see articles all over, hackers are taking advantage of the pandemic and everyone's fears about COVID. So this is another one I got, and if we look at the address, it's coming from protected-forms.com. Why would this website send me something about getting a vax or submitting to a daily screening? But it's it's tricky because it has my name, it has where I work. And then this URL, see, this is so tricky. It looks like it should point to a lacrosselibrary.org page. They even stuck my last name into that link. Oh, I mean, this looks a little legitimate. But when you hover over that link, again, it does this gobbledygook thing along the bottom. That's not going to be a real link. So it's stuff like this you got to be a little more mindful of and hesitate, try to think of why they're trying to get you to click that link. Because if you were to click a link like this, especially if it was from your bank, from the hospital, something really personal and important, that link will probably prompt you to log in and put in your email address and password for that service. But since it's a junky website or malicious website, it now has saved your email and password, and you have not actually gotten into your account. So that's the danger of these links, is that it's an attempt to get your information. So as a little summary, of course, if the sender doesn't look right, like that email address, any spelling or grammar errors, if there is something there that's really encouraging you to click on this link right away, just don't. Check with the friend or business, or log into the app that you might have for it, or check the website. Or if you're not sure if you have a friend around, you can ask them to look at it too. I did want to mention 2 places to practice. If this is of interest, I found these in a Consumer Reports article. So I will admit I was all cocky. I thought, oh, I've been on the internet for 20-something years. I can do this. No, I failed the very first one. So this is worth doing. They kind of talk you through all the little details to look for. And I'm not going to give away how I failed. Just try it yourselves and see. Another one from the Consumer Reports article was this one, practicing if you can tell when you're being phished, if someone's trying to get information from you by pretending to be something that they're not actually. I'm pretty sure I failed this one too. So it's very good to practice. Everyone needs to practice. And much like with passwords, you can check if your email address has been found in a breach. Again, it's that have I been pwned website. But then also Firefox, like the browser, has a website too, where you can put in your email address. And I think Firefox also has a way to notify you if they do end up finding your email address in a breach. With that said, if your email does end up in a breach, immediately change the password on it. Whoa, just immediately change the password. And you can see from my example, one of my very old Gmail email address was in 8 data breaches. But then a newer one hasn't been found in a breach yet. So next we're going to talk about websites a little bit. So the big thing, and sorry for this block of text, I'm going to read it momentarily, but be very mindful about clicking on ads. So a lot of times when you're just searching the internet, those first couple of links have teeny tiny font that says ad right next to it. This used to be way more obvious years back. It'd be a big old box that said ad next to the link, but now it's super tiny. Those are ads. You might notice, like if you scroll to the bottom of CNN, like any popular big website, you'll see stuff like this at the bottom. And you'll notice, again, tiny font says ad, and that's an ad. These are ads. All of them are ads. You might even get really alarming pop-ups on your mobile device. I think less so recently, but this was a big deal. It happened to me a lot. Maybe that was about 4 or 5 years ago. But from what I've read online, it's less of an issue these days. But this whole thing about not clicking on ads, one is that you might not get to the website that you're trying to get to. Like if you were trying to find a 1040 form for your taxes, this e1040.co, probably, if it does have the form, it will probably charge you to print it out or something awful like that. But the bigger concern is this word malvertising. So I had to read some about this. And this is actually kind of alarming. Of course, I don't want to alarm anyone, but this actually is kind of something to be cautious with. So malvertising either entices you to click on something, which could then, by clicking on it, download something onto your computer, like a virus. Or, and here I'm going to read this little block of text on the screen. An infected ad uses an invisible web page element to do a drive-by download. Just downloading the web page that's hosting the ad, or even the spam email or the pop-up window, redirects you to an exploit landing page, which takes advantage of any vulnerabilities in your browser or holes in your software security to access your machine. So that's just saying, if you go to some real junky, clickbaity website, just in the act of loading that website, having it fully come up on the screen, one of those ads could be infected with this malvertising idea. One of those ads could be infected, and just from the sheer act of the page coming up and loading, that infected ad can download something secretly onto your computer, a virus, what have you. That said, that's much more likely to happen on like the really random little blogs you might come across, rather than like CNN, Fox, the really big name websites. But it is something to keep in mind. Just please be hesitant clicking on ads or clicking on really maybe not professionally made websites, because the odds are that that blogger in Idaho probably doesn't have really high security on their end, or isn't really filtering what ads are getting posted on their little blog to generate money. But like CNN, Fox, they have staff dedicated to this kind of stuff. So it's much less likely on the big sites. Another way to secure yourself against this is to make sure everything on your computer is up to date, like always install updates, and to also have ad blocker, which we're going to talk about, ad blocker, and make sure that you have an antivirus and a firewall up. And we'll talk about all of this. So let's just briefly look at website search results. So we've talked about this a little bit. Just like with email addresses, you want to take that extra second to look at what the actual address is. So these are two that I've seen a lot up at the reference desk. People are looking for the quick trip job application. And as soon as you do a search for like quick trip jobs, you might run into stuff like this, and you think, oh, it's the first link. That blue text looks right. Click. But it's not. What you want to do is look at that green text underneath that has the actual website that link is going to take you to. So I don't know what everyjobforme.com is, but I'm guessing it's not actually Quick Trip. what you might want to do is kind of look a little farther down. Like in this case, jobs at Quick Trip points to jobs.quicktrip.com. Like that's the legitimate one. That's going to quicktrip.com. That's the one you'd want to click on versus some random site that wants to get your data. And possibly, oh, I don't know if you guys have ever run into this. It's sites like these that will prompt you to like build a resume online, and then they will charge you if you want to print it out or save it or do anything with it. So just look for the actual URL, the actual website that you want to get to. Same with trying to find IRS forms. If you do a quick search for like an IRS 1040 form, you might see sites like eTax. I'm not sure. But then if you keep looking, there's the right one. There's irs.gov. That's the government website. That'll have the real form. Won't charge you to print it out. You can trust downloading from the government, usually, right? You can trust that that's going to be the legitimate 2020 form that you're looking for. So always just kind of take a look before just clicking on the first result. Another thing that you might want to do is check your browser settings. Just in case you might find out how open your privacy settings are. Like you might be allowing all websites to access your location or your camera or your microphone. So there's usually a way to get in and say either no one gets access, or at least if a website wants to access my location, they have to pop up something asking me if it's okay, if they can access it. And if you want to dig into this, feel free. Again, this could be a great one-on-one. Bring in your device and we can just dig in and get you set up. Here's the ad blocker that I was talking about. So these can be really handy, but it's a balancing act. Because if you block all ads at the same time, like if you're checking PBS, you're checking your local newspaper and you're blocking all their ads, then that business or nonprofit won't get any revenue, right? Those ads are how a lot of really small businesses or nonprofits make money on their websites. So it's a balance. And I did read something, I think it was on like a Mozilla Firefox article, that the average person sees 4,000 ads a day, 4,000 ads. So obviously, just from the overload, we don't want to see them, but we also want to block those possible infected ads too. But we don't necessarily want to cut out the funding for those tiny little businesses that we might be visiting. So if you want to weigh pros and cons and see different options available for you, this Tom's Guide link is great. And I will say, as we're starting to get into more like links that I'm sharing, if you're interested in getting these slides afterwards, feel free to shoot us an email. The email address will be up at the end. I'd hate to see everyone trying to scribble down these long website names. But I do recommend checking out this Tom's Guide article to find a good ad blocker for what you're looking to do. I do also want to pop up this warning here. Do not download AdShield Pro. This is a really nasty Trojan that's posing as an ad blocker right now. Downloads all sorts of junk to your computer. Do not download AdShield Pro. That's the one to avoid. We'll briefly talk about social media here. So if you're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever else is out there, there's usually a way to check your privacy settings. I just ran through the Facebook privacy settings for a different class, and holy smokes, you guys, your information, like everyone's information, is just kind of going out the window there with them. So if you'd like to dig in, I'd be more than happy to talk about this on a one-on-one with anyone. I'm a big proponent of taking care of your privacy, especially against Facebook. Because you might be surprised who can see your posts or your pictures. There's usually a way to turn on alerts in case someone in Indiana suddenly signs in with your Facebook account. You kind of want to know, so you can change your password. You usually have a way or an option to choose whether or not your social media page shows up in search engine results. Like if you Googled my name, will you find my Facebook page? I have that turned off, so hopefully not. And then there's just so much tracking to get into. So this could be easily overwhelming. Understandably, more than happy to just sit down with anyone and walk through this. The other little piece is, that's a common sense thing, but honestly, I hadn't thought of this before. Of two of these three things, we've probably all heard, don't post your vacation pictures until you get back home. Like, don't make it easy. Don't advertise that you're not home. There's a website called Please Rob Me that pulls up Twitter or tweets from Twitter where people mark that they're in Cancun and having a great time. And it's easy enough for determined people to figure out where that person lives, and they know that they are not home. But I hadn't really thought about it. I don't know if you guys see a lot of surveys coming through where your friends are posting these answers to surveys and asking you to fill them out too. And it's always stuff like, where did you go to middle school? What was your first dog's name? What's your favorite color? What was your mother's maiden name? Like, the things the surveys are asking you are your security login questions, right? It's an easy way for anyone malicious to gather what might be the answers to your security questions for like your bank or your medical information, whatever it might be that's private. So don't fill out the surveys online. As fun as it is to share with your friends, just be very careful with those. And then one I really hadn't thought of before, but read online, is to avoid profile pictures that could be used as an ID photo. So if your profile picture on your social media is just you, kind of staring forward, maybe a little smile, right? That looks like it could be easily photoshopped into a DMV background and put onto a fake ID for someone. So always, have the sunglasses on or be tilted to the side, something that really obviously would never be taken for a government ID. Had no idea, but it's a fair point. Let's talk a little bit about Wi-Fi here. So we do get questions about this at the reference desk. There are some do's and don'ts. So if you are going to use public Wi-Fi, either at the library, at McDonald's, at a coffee shop, the first point should really be this one. You should ask the staff what the Wi-Fi signal name is there, because it's way too easy for a malicious person to set up a local Wi-Fi and name it to trick people into thinking that's the Wi-Fi to get on. So if you go to Starbucks and you check your device for local signals for, get on the Wi-Fi there, and you see Starbucks 1, that sounds like it could be the Starbucks Wi-Fi, but it also could be a malicious person who can now intercept all of your internet traffic and see what you're doing. So make sure to ask the staff at whatever public building you're at for the actual name of the Wi-Fi in that building. Another really big recommendation is if you're in your browser, if you're in Chrome, Safari, Firefox, make sure there's that S up in the name of the website, that HTTPS. That's a secure connection that's encrypting your information that you might be passing to that website. Otherwise, obviously, be mindful of people looking over your shoulder. That's always just life in public spaces. And then super advanced for anyone who's got the tech inclination, so you can set up a VPN, which is beyond the scope of this talk, but happy to chat with people about it in the future. Some don'ts, boy, every site and article I checked was like, do not touch anything financial on public Wi-Fi. Like not even the apps. The problem with getting into the apps, which you think would be okay, is that you don't know if it's encrypted or not, right? In an app, you don't see that HTTPS. So you're not 100% sure if that app is encrypting your data when it's sending it back and forth over the internet. A little more advanced is that if you dug into your device settings, you could find a way to set it so your computer doesn't automatically connect to nearby Wi-Fi. It's just an extra privacy thing. So as you're walking down the street, you're not automatically connecting to any Wi-Fi you might be passing by, which could or could not be malicious. At home, there's a lot of like more advanced tips from the FTC about this, but like the good core chunk of it is that if you can change the name of your Wi-Fi router and your router's password, if you're just using whatever it came with, because manufacturers often just use those same names and passwords over and over again, and it's really easy for hackers to get a hold of those lists of default names and passwords and then be able to get on your Wi-Fi and see the traffic that you're passing through, like all the websites you're going to, whatever you're doing on the internet. And as always, keep your software up to date, right? So our last chunk here is about protecting your technology. Consumer Reports is a very big believer in having anti-malware. So that's the latest term. We've always been saying antivirus. Now it's shifting towards saying anti-malware, just to include more horrible things that people are coming up with. Anti-malware software. So as I was saying before, it's a really good idea to have an antivirus or anti-malware program installed. Generally, we're used to thinking of it only for computers, but I'm starting to see a lot more articles online about doing this for our phones and our tablets as well. So it's something to think about. I'm not sure if the free ones here let you, I would imagine, actually, yes, let me back that up. These free programs probably let you install these on multiple devices without worry. And free is fine for most people, Consumer Reports says. If you're not clicking on stuff to download or clicking on links in your email to get into your bank account, free is pretty good. And their top one is one I had not heard about before, this Avira Free Security Suite. That's their top free anti-malware program. You might be familiar with these other names, Kaspersky, Avast, AVG. Those were the ones I knew, like Norton, McAfee, right? But Avira is the top one. If you're interested, of course, Consumer Reports also reviews the ones that cost money. These usually have additional features. They might have their own extra firewall with them. They might do like file shredding to make sure when you delete your files, they're really deleted, that kind of stuff. There's usually like a whole bundle of things that comes with these. but you have to be a little more mindful of which like level you're buying, because when there's money involved, right, they want to charge you per how many devices you put on, like this amount of money for 3 devices, more for more devices. So keep an eye out. Have a firewall up. Windows 10 and Mac computers already have a default one. And those paid for anti-malware programs usually have them too. If you get into the Consumer Reports article, there's more information there about like maybe free firewalls or more free things you might want to install as well. The biggest one outside of keeping your firewall up and having that antivirus, anti-malware installed is to keep everything updated. That's the most important thing. Thankfully, most things are just automatic and will automatically do it, or you'll get that get a prompt to download. I often see on my phone and on my computer, it's usually like, you know, an install needs to be done, your device needs to reboot. Do you want to do it now or later? But it's super important to get these updates. There's usually some kind of security patch involved. And that's really the biggest reason to keep up with them, is that these companies want to keep their stuff protected against all the latest bugs and hacks that can happen. So please keep up with your updates. A good idea, if you're up for it, and again, this is something we could totally do as a one-on-one, is to go through all of the permissions of your apps on your device. You might be surprised what they're asking to access. So just in this case, this is my phone. This was Facebook, and it wants to access my location, my photos, my Bluetooth, my microphone, my camera, and Siri. So you have control over those things. You can say yes or no, or always ask me. So it might be worthwhile peeking into all of your apps and seeing what permissions they might already have. Another really huge one is lock your screens, please. I know it's a pain. Some of the latest Androids, like the Android phones, Samsung, Nokia, those have a kind of a smart feature where the phone, just from the movement of it, the phone can tell if the phone is on you physically and it remains unlocked. So you don't always have to put in your lock code. I think most newer phones also have an option to say, like, when you use my location, when you see where I am and I'm at my house, keep my phone unlocked. But as soon as I leave my house, the lock screen goes back up. So these are really useful, especially if you lose your device. You don't want to make it any easier for someone to get in and get into your information. There's a risky addition to this. I am not brave enough for this. You might be. There's always an option to set your device to erase everything after X number of attempts to unlock. So if some stranger picks up your phone and wants to get into your data, if they put in the wrong passcode like 10 times, the phone's just going to wipe for this, it's just going to blank itself out to protect your information. But if you forget your passcode and you type it in 10 times, then you're wiping your own data. So it's a toss-up. Backing up is also a good idea. This is another thing that we can try to help with on a one-on-one. Apparently there's this whole 3-2-1 rule for backing up, that you want to try to have 3 copies of your data, 2 local, which means probably like on your computer or on your phone, an extra copy on like an external hard drive or a thumb drive, and then 1 off-site. And options could mean just saving in the cloud. Like if you use something like Shutterfly or Google Pictures, something like that, things could be saved there. Or just really like another physical copy, like leave an extra thumb drive with your stuff on it at a friend's house or in the bank lockbox. This New York Times article goes way into it if you're interested. Oops, in learning a little more. I do also want to mention that there's usually a way to turn on this Find My Device feature. So, God forbid, the phone walks away from you, or you leave it on the bus, you leave it in a building, you don't know where you left it. If you have this Find My Device turned on ahead of time, before you lose or it's stolen, whatever happens, then you can get on a computer, get on a friend's device, and go to one of these websites and look to where your device is. So Apple will ask for your Apple ID and password, but then it'll show you on a map, like the last time your phone pinged for GPS, it can show you where you might have left your phone or where the thief has taken it. Same for Android devices. Even Windows 10 now has something where you could hop onto another computer and log in and then locate your device. So as a last kind of sentiment, I just loved this. It's better to be rude than to be ripped off. Like if you don't trust the email, just delete it, mark it as spam. It's better to be rude than to accidentally open something and download something awful onto your computer. Our big takeaways today, hopefully at least some of this feels manageable and useful. Biggest ones I would recommend is using different passwords for different websites. Don't automatically click links or files that are sent to you. Take a careful look at your web search results so you go to the right website. Don't share a whole lot of personal info online because it makes it easier for hackers to guess your password or to guess your security questions. Be cautious using public Wi-Fi. Have that antivirus and a firewall up. Keep all of your updates going. They should all default to updating automatically. Take a look at your privacy settings if you're on social media or if you use a bunch of apps, and to back up your files. Phew, hope that's not too much to ask, right? All of these things. If nothing else, I would highly recommend checking out this super amazing free tool from Consumer Reports. It's securityplanner.consumerreports.org. You answer a couple of questions and they build this whole custom plan for you, and it's all easy to read. It includes extra information if you really want to learn more, and it just like step by step breaks it down to you how to make your online life safer and more protected. So highly, highly recommend checking out securityplanner.consumerreports.org. And then if you're interested in the slides afterwards, shoot us an email. I have a whole bunch of links here, all of the stuff, all the links that I flew by on the slides, and then lots more of reading, because what else would a librarian do but give you more reading? Otherwise, thank you for listening. I think we've got at least a few minutes for questions, right, Heather?